Okay, and we are live and in session once again. Hello, my friends, and welcome to our to the second episode of the Frustrated Healer podcast. Today we'll be taking a look at remakes and remasters, and let me just give a quick shout out to all of you early birds here in the chat. We got Victor, Paul, Aztec, Kat, Transer, the Good Bot, Emil. You see. Yeah, a nice little cozy group of people. And I know some of you have already mentioned definitely that you got some choice words about remakes and remasters, no? A bit of a different location this time. Yeah, for the YouTube viewers, you're going to see a different set. I am working on a different like 3D backdrop on this. I'll be making like a little podcast set in 3D, which I think is going to be pretty nice for the YouTube going forward. I know for the people who are going to be watching just audio, you're not going to see it. So it is what it is. Aye. Okie dokie. So let's see, someone here in the chat, Kat said, most remakes and remasters are of games that you didn't even know about before they were remade. There's quite a few of those, yeah. But it's like, when you think about it, right? When we just think about it, first and foremost. For the sake of this discussion, it would be a good idea, of course, to start off with some definitions, define what is the difference between a remake and a remaster. Reboot, that kind of falls somewhere in between. That one gets kind of muddled. But remake and remaster is a little bit easier to keep track of, no? So essentially a remake, a remaster. Let's start with the remaster. A remaster of a game, it's usually when an older game gets a fresh coat of paint for the modern era, but little to nothing else is actually changed apart from the visuals, no? Sometimes there are some small quality of life changes, but for the most part, it's just making it look better and putting it on modern consoles. Usually, this is an old game from how many generations past. The console that you used to play it on is kind of probably defunct or at some point, right? And then a port kind of goes under a remaster. It's literally the same game, just made available to a different system. Now, some ports, I will give them honorable mentions. We'll get to that in just a bit. And then on a remake, a remake is when an older game gets not just a visual upgrade, but it also goes through a lot of fundamental changes. No, there's usually some mechanical differences, some new implementation, some upgrade to the an upgrade to the system, that kind of thing. So, yeah, and a good example of a remaster is the Final Fantasy VIII HD remaster, where it's really essentially just the same game, only it looks better, no? And then for a remake, we have the Final Fantasy VII remake, and we will get to that. We will get to talking about those. So then, why even bother, right? Why even bother with remaking or remastering games? Well, let's even bring that question to movies. Why remaster or remake a movie? It's primarily an appeal to nostalgia. That really is the big thing, no? Because nostalgia is a powerful thing. It reminds you of a better time, when you look back at the past and you just remember all the good things, and you conveniently forget all the crap that you didn't have before. It's kind of looking at the past through rose-tinted glasses, and it's like, hey, you remember that time when gaming didn't have all these microtransactions and whatnot? If you appeal to that kind of nostalgia, well, you are going to win some points if you do it well. because you're longing for the past that's no longer there. And for video games in particular, this rule isn't so strict. It isn't always followed, but it usually takes about 7 to 10 years for a game to get remade or remastered. Sometimes longer, sometimes way shorter, no? And there is a huge spectrum on the kinds of quality that you'll see for all these different games, no? A good remake, right? A good remake should give you the feeling that, hey, this is how the game felt when I played it as a kid a long time ago and didn't know any better. When you play it when you're younger, you're just like, wow, this is great, even if it's not really that great. But when you play it at an older age, when you play the remake, and it's like, wow, they really did it justice. And a bad remake just makes you question why this was done in the first place, and it almost feels like an insult to the original source material. And we will get to those. Oof. I mean, it is also a way to reintroduce an older franchise to newer audiences. People who were not born during that time, or were not even, were not even gamers, or didn't appreciate that kind of stuff back then, for whatever reason, no? So, yeah, remasters can also happen because the original video game hardware was already phased out. It's extinct. There are no easy ways to play it on older consoles, so they make it available on modern consoles. Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, we've really seen our fair share, whether it's a movie or a game, of great remakes and some really bad ones. We all memed on it. When Cats came out, the movie Cats. Oh God. That was some horrifying, uncanny valley levels of strange that was happening on screen, and we were like, what the hell are we even watching at that point? Oh my God. And it's like, you have to remember, yes, this is actually a remaster. It's like, oh, not quite. You didn't quite land it. And then there are those remakes that just make you ask why. And honestly, I'm not sure how the general internet population feels about this. But I personally feel like the Disney live action remakes are some of the most unnecessary remakes we've had in recent memory. Like, the Lion King remake just felt weird. Like, you had talking lions over what looked like a Nat Geo documentary, and it just felt off. And the live action Aladdin, the live action, and it's like, have you guys just lost any sense of creativity, and you're just remaking your older franchises, and it's not even that good. The art direction is bad, yes. And when it comes to movies, they usually just want to keep the rights. Very true. Yeah. So so in that regard, there are just some things that make you ask why. Just why, right? With the remakes and remasters, it's usually hit or miss. Most of these were misses. Speaking of which, oh boy. Alway, we've already started talking about the Disney live actions. Talked about the Cats remake. So we get to the video game remakes that made you want to cry. Oh man. Although one quick thing before we do talk about the video games, I will say I agree with what they said here in chat. The terrible thing about those remakes is that they tried modernizing something that just didn't need it. Exactly. It comes off completely unnecessary. Like those old animations from the Disney classics, those hold up to this day. I will say, I know I'm talking about videos and I mean movies and stuff like that, right? But look, I will maintain to this day that the golden age of animation of Disney was in the 90s, and it's kind of sad that we will never get another movie that is anywhere near as enthralling, as thought-provoking, and as complex, deeply complex and human as The Hunchback of Notre Dame. That movie, that animation was a masterpiece. I don't care what anyone says. The soundtrack of that is magical. I barely understood it as a kid, and then you watch it later on in life, and you're like, oh my god, how did they even get away with some of the plot lines that they got away with? But it made you think. It hit you hard. It was so complex, so human, so man, who is the monster and who is the man, right? The music too. That's enough about me fanboying over the Hunchback of Notre Dame, right? Yeah. But, chat, I do need to ask you, with this structure, okay, let's talk about the bad first, and then let's end with the good. Because at least when you end with the good, you're left with a good impression. So at least you leave the podcast feeling nice. So, on the note of bad remakes and remasters, this is the good, the bad, the ugly, and the horrible. Can I just ask, chat, what happened to Blizzard? And what was Warcraft 3 Reforged? Honestly, what was Warcraft 3 Reforged? And what happened to Blizzard? Oh my god. Like, oh my god. It's just so painful, especially to me. Because Warcraft 3 was one of the most defining games of my childhood. And that was one of the most defining games growing up in the Philippines. Warcraft was a game changer. It was revolutionary. It was in the age where everyone was playing RTS games, and it was the king. And Warcraft 3 was also the game that spawned an entirely new genre in MOBAs. We have Dota. We have Warcraft 3 to thank for Dota, which then spawned League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, RIP, and Heroes of Newerth, RIP as well. So, to see that game and all the memories that came with it, and you see whatever the hell Blizzard cooked up a few years ago, and it feels insulting. It overpromised but underdelivered. You know, there's like, oh yeah, we're gonna remake these cutscenes, make it all cinematic, make it all, you know, put all the 3D, you know, update the 3D models, make it a full motion video, movie almost, but it just did not work. And then it just, oh god, oh, do you not have phones? Oh, that incident, pain. You felt sad watching the clips from the tournaments. Oh god, yeah. And you know, they also implemented those really questionable, some poor business practices with the world editor. Like, all your maps are now ownership of Blizzard because they missed out on that sweet, sweet Dota money. And then you can't even play the old version of Warcraft 3 anymore. You can't even play the original Frozen Throne or Reign of Chaos. All you have is this poor excuse of a shamble of a game, and it just makes you feel so sad, considering how Blizzard was seen for a while as the company that was by gamers for gamers. And now it's like by corporate for themselves. It's just, yeah, it's pretty sad. Yeah, and it didn't even need a remaster, if we're being honest about it. The game holds up. The game holds up. My friends and I still play it. Well, used to still play the original. I mean, if you grew up anywhere in the Philippines, all the internet cafes had Warcraft as the most necessary game because everyone was just a Dota addict. And to have that just ripped out, kinda painful. Really painful. And then from one beloved franchise to another, we have to also look at the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition. What's definitive about that? Oh my god. Like, GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas are some of the most beloved games of the PS2 era. And all we got was Definitive Edition. All we got was something that was definitively broken. Yeah, it was way too rushed. It was chasing after that holiday release date, which, of course, of course. And it just puts that that onus, that vibe, no? That the primary reason for making remakes and remasters is because you can monetize nostalgia, and that is just the most cynical yet realistic view you can have about it. It's kind of painful when you think about it that way. It was so poorly optimized, it introduced so many new bugs, it used this AI program to polish everything, and it just did not work out. I'm sure any of you guys who already know about the definitive edition have seen all of those clip compilations. All of those bugs are like falling through the floor, going through the void. They even removed the atmospheric fog, so when you use a plane and fly up, you can literally see the whole world map like that. And it's like, was so careless. There was no other motivation. There was no tribute. There was no wish to tribute the original, but just make a cash cow out of it, which is painful. It was just painful, man. You jump ship from being a fan of Blizzard when the ship started slowly sinking a long time ago. I agree with you. That was painful to me because, hell, Blizzard was, going back to the Blizzard thing real quick, Blizzard was the main reason I even wanted to pursue 3D art and 3D, game development in the first place. So to see what happened is just, oof. Yeah, why pay artists when you can just add more polygons, right? This is the future of AI art, you guys. I mean, that's neither here nor there. That's just me throwing a comment. That is its own discussion. Oh my god. Yeah. You have not seen, but you know what you're looking up after this. Oh yeah. We will show you those clips. Just look it up. GTA Trilogy bugs. Those things go a while. And then, for another really bad one, do you guys remember the Silent Hill HD collection? Do you remember that? Oh boy! The voice acting was tilted because Konami lost the source code. they ended up having to remake the damn thing because they lost the source code. It's your game. How do you lose the source code? And then, remember how the most iconic thing about Silent Hill was this atmospheric fog that was always constantly playing tricks on you, right? You were walking there around the town of Silent Hill, and there was always this fog, and you could swear there was a silhouette behind that fog. You just didn't know, and you were just waiting, anticipating what the hell is going to jump out at me in the next second. Well, it's now dry ice. They turned it light blue. It's thin and wispy, and it doesn't even look like fog. There is no sense of danger. It's just not, it's not Silent Hill, man. It is not Silent Hill. Oh my gosh. It's like, it's a horror game, and it's not even scary anymore. Oh. Gaming studios losing the source code, an iconic duo. Yeah, it happens. It happens startlingly. The frequency is startling. It is not supposed to happen that frequently, man. But the fact that there have been so many cases of it happening makes you worry, right? Makes you worry. Now, the honorable mentions I wanted to give are with 2 ports. The first one is The Last of Us Part 1, the PC port. There's nothing wrong with the game itself. The Last of Us Part 1 is still a fantastic game. But the PC port, oh my goodness. You had one job. You didn't optimize it, you didn't polish it, you didn't... the game already runs well on consoles, but you put it on PC and there was just, no care in making sure it ran well. It's just like, all right, let's put it out there and make money. Let's kill that PC port dead, right? Oh my god. And then... newest game on the GPU Killer Club. Mm-hmm. And do you guys remember the Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered? Thing is, you could still play Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Remember the remastered edition? That was bundled in with Infinite Warfare Deluxe Edition. They just bundled it with Infinite Warfare. It's like, hey, if you want to play the remastered Call of Duty Modern Warfare, you gotta buy it off of, with a bundle pack on the Deluxe Edition, which would cost you a lot more money. You could still play Modern Warfare, but it was hacked to hell. I mean, to be fair, that's just Activision being Activision, right? Yeah, and then later, after they created that false sense of scarcity, they then released the remaster, the Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remaster, as a standalone, only for it to have microtransactions. Very clear what the priority was, right? Very clear what the priority was. Oh, hello, Ayu. Thank you for dropping by, man. Yeah, because Activision. And I mean, it's COD and you know what you signed up for. The thing is, it didn't used to be that way, right? That's the thing. Call of Duty 4 was great. Honestly, it was a great game. The campaign was fantastic. I really got into it, and I'm not even that big of an FPS player. And then came the yearly releases, and we got sequelitis, and it's just like the yearly release every single year. Oh my god, just too much. Yeah, and then they heard the word microtransactions, and then rip. Yeah. You know, another game. This one is not as bad as these egregious examples. But I did kind of want to talk about the Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl remakes that we had recently. I would consider those bad remakes too. Not horrid, not completely horrible, no? But I think I would consider that a bad remake. Honestly. See, the weird part, the really, really weird part about Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl is that it was based off of the Gen 4 games, the Gen 4 Pokemon games, Diamond and Pearl. Now, when those games came out, they weren't perfect. You look at it through nostalgia, of course, it's like, oh, well, those were great games. But there were so many issues that were solved by Platinum, which was, for all intents and purposes, the definitive Gen 4 experience. I mean, in Pokemon, right? You have the Elite Four and the gym leaders who specialize in one type of Pokemon. Diamond and Pearl was so odd in that you had an Elite Four Fire type user who only had 2 Fire types. What? And he even used a Steelix and a Lopunny? And it doesn't make any sense. Like, why? You just had Pokemon that could use fire moves, but it just didn't work. Well, what happened in Platinum? Well, now in Platinum, everyone had access to proper Pokemon that they could use for their teams. So why didn't you use the template of Platinum? Why didn't you make any, why didn't you use the implementations of Platinum? It's like, no, this is a Gen 4 remaster. This is gonna be a Diamond and Pearl remake. So we will stay loyal to Diamond and Pearl. And I'm like, weird decisions. Just weird decisions. Steelix, Lopunny, Drifblim, Rapidash, and Infernape. That's so wild. The fact that you had to give him the Fire-type starter and a Rapidash, and then it was just a jumbled pile of weirdness. And then, yes, I was gonna say too, the chibi character design didn't quite feel right, considering that the games that came before it were already doing this. We're already having a move to the full 3D models that we would see in modern Pokemon games, so it really felt like quite a few steps back with Diamond and Pearl remakes. Yeah. Didn't really, fly that well, honestly. So, this then brings me to the biggest mixed bag. The elephant in the room that must be addressed. We all know this. You know what I'm about to bring up. Let's talk about the FF7 remake. Because this is a rough one. Here we go. Oh boy, I love how the chat instantly like there's the hive mind going like, oh god, here we go. There's the FF7 remake. Okay. Let me first start by acknowledging the merits. First off, it is visually stunning. Midgar looks fantastic. All of the places that they decided to feature in the remake look fantastic. This is what you imagined it to be like when you played the original Final Fantasy VII on PS1 all those years ago. Just the attention to detail that they gave the environments, wonderful stuff. The combat, does feel pretty good. It's a bit of a mix between active and turn-based. Now I know, of course, the purists are gonna be like, you want it purely turn-based, or some of people want, a different pace of gameplay, but that's neither here nor there. It's just that the combat system, for what it is, it works, but there were also, what do you call it? It also felt a little too simple in places. Like, they couldn't decide. Like, it does feel like a hybrid between active and turn-based, but at the same time, it feels like they couldn't decide which of the two they really wanted to use. So instead, you got a strange mix of the two that doesn't feel like a polished version of either one. It's this strange hybrid monstrosity. Yeah. It was similar to FF15, which did come out, a little bit before. I believe Final Fantasy 15 was the Final Fantasy that came right before the remake, no? Yeah. They went for the new combat, and yeah. So, the thing is, too, this is the really weird part about FF7 Remake, no? The story. Okay? The story of Final Fantasy VII is a classic. Everyone who has played it knows it by heart. Any big Final Fantasy VII fan knows the stories by heart. When you remake a game, when you remake a movie, you don't retcon and change. You don't remake the story. You're trying to preserve and maintain that nostalgia, right? And present it to a newer audience. Modernize it and present it to the people who remember it from the past. But what we have instead, it feels like the FF7 remake feels like a fanfic rather than a retelling. They have changed so much of the game, of the essential story of that game, that it doesn't feel like the same game anymore. FF7 felt like FF7 remake felt like they couldn't decide between making a Kingdom Hearts-esque game or a true Final Fantasy game, or the director just didn't want to go with the whole story again. But the thing is, if you just gave us Final Fantasy VII with those graphics, maybe put in some combat, maybe give us the option, right? Give us the option of pure turn-based, and then give us the option of like Kingdom Hearts active style. Maybe that would have been better. But I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel like the same game, no? And oh boy. This one, to me, this was the biggest issue I've ever had with Final Fantasy VII Remake from the very beginning. When we had the announcement, I was like, all right, I'm looking at it with cautious optimism. This could be great, but this could also go very, very wrong. And then they said, Part 1. That immediately to me was the death knell. Immediately, the red flags were raised. Cash cow. And seeing where it's gone since then makes me more reinforced in that idea. We just wanted an upgraded FF7. But when they said that, oh, the game is going to be split into parts. Like, uh-oh. And we don't know how many parts. Uh-oh. What? What do you mean you don't know how many parts? That just tells me you're going to sell this game we already know about. We already know the story of FF7. And you're going to chop it up into pieces? And you're going to sell each piece of that to us at full price? And you expect us to be okay with that? Well, apparently, the casuals were. FF7 Remake was a financial success by all means. Honestly, it was. And then what happens in the wait after part 1? Instead of going to part 2 immediately, right? What do we get? Oh, here's a DLC campaign attached to the first part, which features Yuffie, even though she wasn't even supposed to be part of that story at that point. It begins. It begins. It begins. And it's just, oh, it's just painful. It was an oh no moment, and you're like, all right, there's no turning back. This is not gonna go well. This is not gonna go well. And then they changed the story. It's just not the same game anymore. It's just not the same. Like, ugh. Look, I understand that the original PS1 FF7 was a game that was split across 4 discs, but that's just because there was too much content to be contained in a single CD back in the day. That doesn't mean you have to take the same route when you remaster the damn thing. Oh my god. I don't get it. It's just painful. The multiple disc argument doesn't hold. Absolutely agree with you. It's a total bra moment. Agreed. And I thought I was just being cynical about it. But when they made all those decisions, I was like, kind of painful, right? Kind of painful. Oh god. Can I just also quickly mention there's another game that I wanted to mention. This one's just quickly as an honorable mention in the terms of the mixed bag. The PS1, on the PS1 as well, we had FF7. What was one of the other? There were a lot of great games on the PS1. We had Metal Gear Solid. Yes, Konami is back. And then it got remade as Metal Gear Solid 1 Twin Snakes for the GameCube, if I'm not mistaken. That felt really weird. That felt a bit unnecessary. And one of those strangest decisions that I will never get over is how they had the decision to re-record all the voice acting for MGS1. Which honestly feels weird because if any of you go back to the original MGS1 on PS1, it's already amazing. The re-recorded lines sound a little bit stilted. There's something a little bit off about it. And hell, even the accents were lost. You guys remember in your codex, right? You had your team of Mei Ling, Nastasha, and Naomi. Naomi had a British accent, Nastasha had a Ukrainian accent, and Mei Ling had a bit of a Chinese accent. All of those were purged. They all had American accents in the remake. I'm like, why? Why? I don't know. That's why it's a mixed bag, because if you compare it visually, yes, it did get an upgrade, and it looks good. You gave access to MGS on the GameCube, you know, for Nintendo fans who may not have had the PS1, you know. So that's why it's a bit of a mixed bag. Like, I can appreciate what it did, all the positives that it did, but it had a bit of an asterisk attached to it, right? Yeah. So, let's change the pace a little bit, chat. Let's talk about some good remakes. Talk about some good remakes, and then we'll talk about some amazing remakes. Okay? Because not all Pokemon remakes are bad. Heart Gold and Soul Silver is now the definitive way to play any of the Gen 2 games. Gen 1 and Gen 2, you could tell that the source code was held by duct tape and plywood, especially Gen 1 Pokemon. And it's come a long way since then, no? So to see Heart Gold and Soul Silver looks so good as a remake, your Pokemon could actually maximize all of their moves. They could, we finally had the physical special split. We've had all the improvements that came from Gen 3 and Gen 4, and you implement that to an old game, and suddenly it feels like it is exactly what a remake should be. It feels like a tribute to the original, while also improving on what made it so good in the first place and keeping the nostalgia. The soundtrack of Gen 4 of HGSS, Heart Gold Soul Silver, is really good. Because Gen 2 had a really good soundtrack. And sometimes when you remaster something, the tracks kind of get lost a little bit. But this one did a fantastic job. I mean, you even had proper story importance to Ho-Oh and Lugia instead of just finding them randomly in the older games. Yeah. The Final Fantasy GBA remakes were great examples too of how to remake old games. Yes. It had a lot of conveniences. A lot of quality of life improvements. Because really, some games, as much as you may have nostalgic appeal for them, some of them don't age well. Like Pokemon Gen 1. Like Red and Blue, sprites in those games are horrifying. Like the Haunter sprite, the Golbat sprite. There's a lot of nightmare fuel in in those games. And Heart Gold Soul Silver also had the option to listen to the old soundtrack if you really wanted to, tickle that nostalgic bone in your body. So it was so complete. It was very, very well done, no? And then on to something more recent, something we brushed on the last time. The Resident Evil 2 remake. We'll get to the 4. We'll get to that. Resident Evil 2 remake was kind of the sign that, hey, Capcom knows what they're doing again. It was inspiring confidence. It was inspiring some confidence. Like, hey, Capcom actually knows what they're doing again. They've refocused. And then the whole Mr. X sequence, that was so good that you guys, I'm sure you've seen that there have been so many reaction videos, right? Or like compilations of like different streamers or gamers, YouTubers reacting to Mr. X in the Resident Evil 2 remake. And just that moment is enough to tell you just how good of a remake it is, honestly. You can accept the RE3 if you can show you can do RE2 and 4. Yes, we'll get to 4. We will get to 4. Let me see. What else do I have listed here? Oh, you guys also mentioned it too. The Crash Bandicoot and Spyro trilogies. Yes. I freaking love Crash Bandicoot. Okay. Crash Bandicoot was the first game that I ever played on the PS1 I went to my uncle's house and I saw this game. You know, I saw him playing this on the PS1. That was the first time I've seen a PS1. And that was the first game I saw. And that immediately made me want a PS1 and play that game. It was Crash 2. It was Crash 2. He let me play it for a few minutes. I was hooked. That was it. That was it, man. Considering how long it was between the the original trilogy, it was such a good return to form because at that point, Crash and Spyro, they both tried their hands on different things. There were so many games that came out after the original PS1 trilogy, in the PS2 era. But somehow, some way, those games just didn't hold the same magic as the original trilogy. For speaking on both, no? Like the Crash 4, not the modern Crash 4, not the recent one, no? As in the Wrath of Cortex, if I'm not mistaken, felt a little bit off. It kind of felt like Crash, but not quite Crash. Twin Sanity was great, though, yes, I will give it that. But a lot of the other games felt a little bit weird. Pretty weird. And so did Spyro. I mean, Spyro had an ARPG game. Did you guys know that? Apparently, Spyro had a freaking Diablo-type game. And it's just like, I'm here to platform, collect gems, save dragons, and whatnot. Like, I never knew Spyro for the combat, right? And then we had the GBA games. Oh no! Crash Purple, and Spyro Orange. Those glorified minigame collections. Oh boy, that gives a lot of pain. And I spent a lot of time on those games because I was a kid and I didn't really know any better. Joke was on me, though, wasn't it? But that's the thing. With those games, people were clamoring for just a return to form. Like, let's just go back to the good old days. We got the Reignited trilogy for Spyro, and we got the Insane trilogy for Crash. Boy, those were some really fun weeks of gaming. I know the games don't take long to complete, but I say weeks because I did the completionist stuff. I did all the speed running in Crash Bandicoot. Oh boy, that was really fun, and it just felt like the proper tribute to these old games that just deserve this treatment. No, the games look great. Obviously, most of these remakes usually do look great. No, most of them do look great. And it's just that they did what needed to be done. It's just a modernization of the old games. Feels great to play. And you feel like a kid again. And that's really all a remake or a remaster needs to do, if we're being honest about it. Right? All you want to do is be able to play your old game and feel like a kid again. Oh boy. And now, I want to talk about, since we're on the, right before we talk about Resident Evil 4, I want to talk about the Dead Space remake. I know I played that on stream. Not the remake, no, but the 2008 version. But the Dead Space remake was pretty good. That was pretty good too. Stayed true to the design of the original. It had It had the same vibe. Your character. Some people felt a bit mixed that your main character Isaac could actually talk now because he didn't in the first game. He did in the second and the third games. So when they implemented that voice for him in the first game, in the first game's remake, and some people were felt a little bit, oh, that's surprising, but it didn't really take away anything from the game. If anything, it was still snappy. It still played well. Seeing the designs modernized, it's great stuff too. Still scary as hell. Exactly. Yeah. It was just fun. Him being able to talk was an improvement because now we actually get reactions. True. Like, it was a mixed bag. Some people felt weird because, like, oh, that wasn't how it was in the original. But having your character in a horror game be able to react to their surroundings does more for the game than most people think, honestly. One of the pillars in the horror game genre. Oh yeah. I mean, heck, when I played the original one, I immediately understood why this was such a well-beloved game, no? And on that note of horror, shall we talk about what is possibly the single best damn remake we've ever seen? Can we talk about Resident Evil 4 remake? Because, man, Resident Evil 4, not even the remake, the original, was fun as hell. It's crazy. It is an absolutely crazy horror game. Has some elements of, still has some scary elements here and there, but it's not as outright scary as a traditional horror game, no? There's a lot more, it's a lot more action-packed. It's a lot crazier. It's a lot of wild stuff. The original was already goated, right? Exactly. So I understand that some people may have had some qualms about the game being remade, some hesitations, no? Some worries. Because Resident Evil 2 Remake was great. We already talked about that. Resident Evil 3 Remake didn't quite hit the same high points and the notes as Resident Evil 2. So people are like, then are you guys going to be able to remake 4, which is still one of the most beloved games in the franchise's history? Boy, did they! Boy, did they! Just looking at the damn gameplay trailers, chat, when they were showcasing the game with all of the trailers, it looked breathtaking. Like, they maximized modern game engines, modern game development stuff, fantastic environments, crazy characters, wild enemies. And then, of course, because it's Capcom, hell, let's do a parry mechanic too. What? and one of the best things too, Ashley's AI got upgraded. Thank God. Ashley had an upgrade in the AI. That's one of the most common things I remember from Resident Evil 4, right? The original Resident Evil, the biggest gripe people had was Ashley was so annoying and it felt like an overextended escort mission, and we all love those, don't we? And then, finally, it doesn't feel like an overbearing escort mission anymore. She's not an idiot. She doesn't just stand there anymore and lets herself get kidnapped. One of the people in the chat was saying, when the game came out, I wasn't planning on buying it. Then I did buy it and proceeded to beat it 9 times in a week. Wow! Oh my gosh. It's so fun. Like, honestly, for me too, like, I wasn't the biggest fan of Resident Evil growing up because I was one of those kids who wasn't very into horror games, no? But I was able to really appreciate Resident Evil 2, what it was, and Dead Space, the original Dead Space. So when I see what they did with Resident Evil 4, see, that feels like the best example of a remake you could have. Does it stay true to the original essence of Resident Evil 4? Absolutely. Does it stay true to the characters, to the story? Yes. But did they also implement so many improvements that make it so much better and so much and a worthy improvement over the original? Hell yes. Hell yes. The combat in Resident Evil 4 is some of the most fun you could ever have in a horror game. And that's saying something. And that's saying something. Yeah. Because that is the best part about the Resident Evil 4 remake. They did not fix the stuff that worked. What worked in the original, they kept it. What didn't work in the original, they improved it. It's that simple, right? If you put it that way. In essence, it is simple. Keep what isn't broken and improve what could have been fixed. You get the Resident Evil 4 remake. Which is baffling. Like when you look back at the other wacky examples, no? You just have to wonder, how do you get it so wrong? For the games that do get it wrong, and the movies that get it wrong, how do you get it so wrong when the concept should be so simple? Also, how do you lose the freaking source code? It's your game. But that aside, right? It is baffling when you see a bad remake. Because the game already exists. You're not creating anything new. The game exists already. You've made a success out of it that people want to see it remade. So why do you mess it up that much? Like, you've done a lot of the work in the past. So why are you... A misinterpretation of getting into the times, potentially. Oh, man. So you then have to ask yourself the question, right? Like, nostalgia is definitely a very powerful force. But beware the hype train that only seeks to monetize it. Because as we came to the conclusion today, it's not supposed to be difficult to make a good game. It is difficult to make a good game. But it is not supposed to be difficult to remake or remaster said game if it was already considered good enough to even be considered to be remade. No? So I think that's a good way to wrap this episode up, chat. The nice way to cover the ground, the spectrum of different qualities in the wonderful, wacky world of remakes, whether it's a movie or a video game. Yeah. So for next time, the topic I want to talk about, honestly, is the is the topic of accessibility controls in fighting games and the execution barrier. Because of recent events, Idol Showdown, Street Fighter 6, I feel like the discussion on modern controls and ease of access, especially in fighting games, is now a hotter topic than ever. All right? So that's going to be fun, you guys. Keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, I would say our session is adjourned. Everybody, please take care of yourselves. Have a lovely rest of your day, afternoon, and evening. And I will see you in the next one. This is Senator Warchief signing out. Otsu Sen.